despite all the chaos that it brought. I'm going to talk about books that I've read, that I am reading, and that I'm planning to read in the next couple months. Honestly, I'm only really showing you 2 books that I bought because I want to share. So sit back and relax and let's get into it. The first book that I want to talk about was one that I actually finished at the end of May, but I didn't include it in my reading wrap-up because I pre-filmed that. But since posting that video at the end of May, I did finish Lisa Tadeo's Animal. Animal is a very, very chaotic story. I'm going to tap on something in the meantime. This is my water bottle that holds 50% coconut water and 50% water, because side story, but I used to really not like coconut, and coconut. Over the past couple years I've been growing to love it, but coconut water, that kind of set me back a little bit, so I watered it down. But I figured that the extra hydration would be good for me, so I'm giving it a go. Anyway, Animal. This follows a woman who has had a very, very chaotic life and has a very troubling past. And something insane happens. A man actually, I feel deeply uncomfortable talking about this book in ASMR style. Just if you're interested, Animal, Lisa Tadeo, Google it, look up all the trigger warnings. It was a wild ride. A man dies in front of her, a man that she knows, and the whole book kind of explores her relationship to men and sexuality and her family history. It's been a while as well since I've read it, so this is not the best review to start with or the most cohesive review, but during reading this I felt very disturbed, yet it was also really good. I read it in the Dutch translation because I got it from my library, which is why I don't have a physical copy right now. I've had to return it since. But because it's set in the US and it has American characters, I've read many stories, of course, that were set in America that featured American characters, and I've read them in English, and that feels most realistic to me because, I mean, luckily I can read in English, right? But because I read it in Dutch, I kept imagining a Dutch person who had moved to the US or something. I just felt like the setting was off for me personally because of the language that I read it in and the way that it was translated. I could see how sentences would have made more sense in English and it would have touched me a bit more because female rage is mentioned a lot, I think, but in Dutch they translated it to vrouwelijke razernij. Mijn Nederlandse mensen, ja sorry, wie gebruikt het woord razernij nou nog? Female rage, the literal translation that was used, is not a phrasing that is used at all. And so there were more moments like that where, because of the wording, I could see what it would be like in English, and I don't know. I had a harder time getting into the story and getting through the story even outside of the plot, and the plot was crazy. It was definitely female rage in a book, but if you want to read about female rage or something, I would recommend Night Bitch more. I thought that that was so unique and on its own, and I don't know. Animal was just not my favorite read, and I would give it a high rating, and I think I did because it was very good for what it was, but at the end of the day, it's just not my favorite read, so I would not necessarily recommend it unless you are really looking for something that is deeply about female rage, sexuality, etc. I was just not in that headspace, and I am not in that headspace to read a whole book about that. And I'll touch on that later, I think, but that just made me not enjoy it as much. So yeah, that was the first review. And now I can tippity tap on a book, because the first one that I actually finished in June was Almond by Won Byung-sun. I don't know if I pronounced that right, and I'm really sorry if I didn't. This was a very endearing story, and heartbreaking, but it will also put your heart back together again. First of all, I'm going to read the back to you. Janye was born with a brain condition called alexithymia that makes it hard for him to feel emotions like anger or fear. He does not have friends, but his devoted mother and grandmother provide him with a safe and contented life. But everything changes when a shocking act of random violence shatters his world, leaving him alone and on his own. Struggling to cope with his loss, Janye retreats into silent isolation until a troubled teenager Gon arrives at school. The two form a surprising bond, and when Gon suddenly finds his life at risk, Janye will have to step outside of every comfort zone he has created to perhaps become the hero of his own story. That was a long sentence. So, the main character of this book can't feel emotions. So no fear, no anger, no happiness in that sense. I think for me, reading this, it raised the question of, does he really not feel anything? Like, is there not happiness and love? And it's a really, really interesting topic. And I had read and heard so many positive reviews on this book that I wanted to give it a go. The writing is very accessible. I felt like it was very easy to follow. The plot, it was devastating, and because personally I would very much identify as a highly sensitive person, I was kind of afraid that I wouldn't connect to this character who doesn't feel, but I was so touched and moved and enamored by this main character that, I don't know, it was not a thing at all. So I would 10 out of 10 recommend this. Like, I'm not rating it a 10 out of 10, I think I rated it an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Beautiful read. Really, what I said breaks your heart and puts it back together again, honestly. It's quite short. I did note some things annotated. Books took me to places I could never go otherwise. They shared the confessions of people I'd never met and lives I'd never witnessed. The emotions I could never feel and the events that I hadn't experienced could all be found in those volumes. They were completely different by nature from TV shows or movies. The worlds of movies, soap operas, or cartoons were already so meticulous that there were no blank spaces for me left to fill in. These stories on screen existed exactly as they had been filmed and drawn. For example, if a book at the description, a blonde lady sits cross-legged on a brown cushion in a hexagon-shaped house, a visual adaptation was also the Reese Book Club edition, and I don't want that sticker on, and I'm being picky. But so I sent those back as well, and I don't know when I'm gonna read that one, because I don't want that book in that size. Funny story. Daphne always loved the way that Peter told her story. That is until it became the prologue to his actual love story with his childhood bestie, Petra. Daphne is engaged to Peter until he suddenly leaves her for his childhood bestie, Petra. Petra was in a relationship with Miles and broke it off with Miles. So Daphne and Miles are the ones that got left behind, if you will. Daphne suddenly has to leave her place, and so she reaches out to Miles and moves into his place. So you have two people living together who are at the bottom of the well, just sulking and deep in their heartbreak, and kind of pulling each other out of that, and falling in love in the meantime. Spoiler, but also summer romance, so we all know. This, I thought, was a very lovely story. I felt like there were a lot of reviews saying that this lacked depth and character development, or I don't exactly remember what people said, don't pin me on it, but there were a lot of mixed reviews. Same with Great Big Beautiful Life. I personally really liked this. Could that be because Miles has the exact descriptors of someone that I would fall in love with? Maybe, probably. Do I have a history of dating a person who fits a lot of the descriptors of Miles? Yes. So do with that what you will, but I did have a little bit of a crush on Miles. Daphne was a lovely character as well. She works at a library. She's very passionate about that, and I love that her passion really is shown through this entire book. I did not appreciate some of the ways that these two were communicating with each other. It was sometimes a bit frustrating to read how they would not communicate certain things, I guess. But that's, I think, just summer romance territory. It's an issue that I've read many pages over the past couple of years where I was very frustrated with how characters were communicating with each other, so that wasn't necessarily new or too distracting from the plot or the enjoyment of the story. I think I would rate this 7.5 out of 10 because it's Emily Henry, it's summery, it's cute, it doesn't have the summery beachy vibes as a main point, and I think that is because this is just set in the location that it starts at, and in a lot of the stories that are, summer romances, etc., that I like people are also really going somewhere else. So with Carly Fortune's books, in the first book, Percy going to Barry's Bay and Alice in the second book going to Barry's Bay. In Happy Place, them all going to a cottage. In Beach Read, her going to her dad's beach house. It's all like there's a switch of scenery and there's a going somewhere that really adds to a summer vibe for me. Because I used to go on summer vacations a lot, I think that's just an association that I have. But even though this takes place in the same spot, much as in Blue Sisters, so far we're good. I'm not that far along, though I've been reading it for a long time. I haven't been reading much this past week, because I'm having a hard time getting into this, to be honest. So far, I am finding the characters to be insufferable, but some are also charming, and I don't know. Also, again, this is in the first couple pages, there's some heavy sexual content. I'm just not really in that space right now that I want to read about people going to sex clubs and do your thing and explore. It's just that I'm just not there right now in my reading preferences, you know. And that's what I also felt with reading Animal. But this follows Cleo and Frank, and Cleo and Frank get married, and it kind of follows their relationship. It's set in New York, and I honestly don't know much else about it other than I'm currently at a part where Cleo's father and stepmother are introduced, and I hate them, so that's kind of all I can say about it. It's a more, I would say, a bit more slow-paced story, but there are some time jumps. But yeah, I don't know, it might actually become a soft ENF, but for now I'm still going to read it today and tomorrow, and then I'll see how I feel about it. But I'm not sold, I have to say. At some point, at some moments have been nice, or I've been touched by a character or charmed, but not that much. I do think that this is a beautiful cover, and I love this artwork. The painting is done by Gil Button, and she also did the print on Blue Sisters, on all the different editions. I feel like she has done the artwork, and I think it's really beautiful. Very aesthetically pleasing. And then I want to talk to you about two books that I got, because I recently went to the bookstore and I picked up two other books. I also picked up Funny Story on that bookstore run, but this is Lorraine Kelly's The Island Swimmer. When Evie's father falls desperately ill, she finally returns to the family home in the wild Orkney seaside, a place she swore never to come back to. As Evie, lonely, clears out her father's neglected house to prepare it for sale, she finds herself drawn to a group of cold water swimmers led by her old friend Freya. Shout out Freya ASMR. Together they find calmness beneath the waves and help Evie face up to the mistakes in her past, unlocking a treasure of truths that will reverberate through the community and shake her family to its core. Now the reason I picked it up is because, first of all, the cover is really pretty, and here it says, like getting a hug on a freezing cold day. So I would love a warm hug, you know. So I'm really excited to read this. The beginning, from what I'm reading, is giving beach read, but I think that it'll take a very different turn, and I'm very excited about it. Let me know if you've read it, but only if you liked it. If you didn't like it, don't tell me, because I am gonna read it, and I spent my money on it, so yeah, don't tell me if you didn't like it. By the way, I also want to give a little reminder, maybe, by Brian Washington. Benson and Mike are two young guys who've been together for a few years. Good years. But now they're questioning why they're still a couple. There's the sex, sure, and the meals Mike cooks for Benson, and well, they love each other. But when Mike finds out his estranged father is dying in Osaka, just as his acerbic Japanese mother, Mitsuko, arrives for a visit, Mike picks up and flies across the world to say goodbye. In Japan, he undergoes an extraordinary transformation, discovering the truth about his family and his past, while back home, Mitsuko and Benson are stuck living together as unconventional roommates. As Mike considers a new start in Japan, and as Benson thinks about moving on, could this be the end of their love story, or could it just be the beginning? Doesn't this sound really exciting? I have never read a book that has two MMCs, gay romance, two men. Never read it before, so it's about time, you know. I am so excited to read this. It doesn't look like the book that I would gravitate towards if I saw the cover, but reading the back, I'm like, yeah, I could really enjoy that. I love slightly high stakes, complications, and like exploring your identity, cultural identity, facing big life decisions, and how are you going to go about that, I guess. So I'm very interested. This is probably the book that I will read next after I finish or DNF. Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I forgot the name. Once again, if you've read this and you like it, let me know, drop me a comment. It's also an author that I haven't heard of before, so I just can't wait. I wish I had 8 sets of eyes so I could read 8 different books at the same time, you know. I'm also really excited to read Taylor Jenkins Reid's new book, Atmosphere. I hope that that will be good. I don't have it yet. Also, large print issue. Where are all the smaller sized books? I just like it if I can toss them in my bag a little bit more easily, so maybe I'm picky, but that's just me. Anyway, I'm going to go. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.